Hi, my name is Haley Wood, and this is my EDL 851 Module 13 case study video. So the case study was about a good teacher that turned bad. There had recently been a change in behavior of a first grade teacher, Mrs. Horton. The principal kind of noticed that there was a change in her attitude. Also, she was stressed and not really as friendly as she used to be, and she kind of started to argue a lot with teachers. The principal thought that maybe something would improve over the summer. And then the next school year, things did not quite seem to improve. Within the first 6 weeks of school starting, multiple parents had contact saying that they were upset because they felt that their student's teacher would scream at them and verbally abuse them. And they, after multiple attempts to contact the teacher, Mr. Stafford, one of the parents contacted the principal, Mrs. Wilson, and he wanted to arrange a conference with her. So the principal arranged a conference with Mrs. Horton herself and the parent. Mr. Stafford wanted his daughter removed from Mrs. Horton's classroom, and in that conference, Mrs. Horton became very defensive, and she screamed at the parent, calling him a liar, and slammed her hands on the desk. So first, the problem identification and analysis. Some facts that I know from the case. Mr. Horton was a former Teacher of the Year in the district. Her attitude and behavior started to change the previous year and then in the current school year. And some of the colleagues said that Mrs. Horton was experiencing some issues at home with her husband. And the parents complained of yelling, which was upsetting the students. Mrs. Wilson, the principal, she had observed the classroom many times and she didn't really seem to notice those behaviors. She did, however, notice those behaviors, the change in attitude with the not being as friendly. She noticed those prior to this situation. Parents contacted, and Mr. Stafford, one of the parents, wanted to arrange a conference with the teacher and the principal, and Mrs. Horton became very upset during that meeting. Some of the things that I need to know in this case. I need to know if parents for sure did try to contact Mrs. Horton to discuss those concerns. I also need to know, why did parents not come to the principal before they contacted the board members? Why did they kind of go straight there? I want to know if Mrs. Horton has an explanation for her behavior or the change that has been noticed. See if she'll kind of admit to things that have been going on, or if she's wanting to keep that to herself. I also want to know if any previous observations show signs of inappropriate behavior, other than what was noticed by the principal, just if anything in the observations of the classroom in previous years have ever been noticed where a teacher has yelled at students or demeaned them. And I also want to know, I need to know what I can do to help Mrs. Horton. That's kind of a big thing that I think is just kind of seeing what the teacher needs to help improve. So, in the short, the problem, Mrs. Horton, former Teacher of the Year in the district, there was that change in her behavior, could be due to some issues that are occurring at home, and several parents want their child removed from that classroom because of the verbally abusive language that Mrs. Horton uses towards those students. And the principal has to decide what to do about the situation, how to help Mrs. Horton, and kind of to see whether those students should be moved from the classroom or what a different plan could be to help curb the issue. So my proposed plan of action. First, after the parent left, I would tell Mrs. Horton that we would discuss her actions later. She seemed very defensive and upset in the situation, so I think it would be best to allow her some time to calm down so we can have a better discussion. I would then communicate with Mr. Stafford, just call him up, let him know, hey, I'm working on this, just so he kind of feels that I'm not pushing it off to the side. Just let him know that I'm going to move forward with the plan and talk with Mrs. Horton to get something going. Then, next, I will meet with Mrs. Horton to discuss the behavior that occurred during the meeting, as well as behaviors that parents were saying. And I'll just try and document information, get as much information as I can about what Mrs. Horton says. I'd probably talk to my superintendent again, see if I can get more information from what those parents said to board members. And I'll kind of start providing Mrs. Horton with some help and resources as I can. I will then create a plan with Mrs. Horton that would include more observations in her classroom and also a para to kind of help, as well as kind of let me know what's going on, if things are improving. I will also then schedule a meeting with Mrs. Horton, Mr. Stafford, and myself again to communicate the plan with Mr. Stafford. And in that meeting, I will also apologize to Mr. Stafford as well as Mrs. Horton. I will make sure that we're both prepared and professional for this meeting. Just kind of remind Mrs. Horton that she didn't seem quite prepared or professional in the last meeting, so we need to make sure that she is this time. And I will also let Mr. Stafford know that if this plan doesn't work, we'll look at alternate solutions, but at this time I would like to leave his daughter in the classroom with Mrs. Horton. And then finally, I will increase observations in all of the classrooms, not just Mrs. Horton's. And just to try and prevent future situations like this from occurring. I will also provide more professional development for all of my teachers, just to kind of address the issue, not specifically, but just the issue of classroom management and what can be done to improve that, and just encourage parents to come to me with concerns, since it did not really occur. It went straight to the board before. So when resolving the issues, always need to keep in mind what is best for the students. So in this case, what I did, communication with parents. When I called Mr. Stafford, just kind of kept communicating with him so he knew what was going on, and as well as meeting with him. I think it's important to be visible and engaged with all parents. Kind of talk to those other parents that also had issues other than Mr. Stafford, to let them know that I do care about the situation and I'm working to try and improve it for all of those students. I went to promote a safe learning environment in all classrooms, not just Mrs. Horton's classroom, but just make sure that there's a safe learning environment for all students in all grades. And I'll do that by having increased observations, like some walkthroughs, as well as the increased professional development on classroom management. I also want to provide more assistance to staff members, encourage self-care and open communication. Just make sure that they know that if they have an issue, they can come to me and I will help them work through those issues, just so they can be the best teacher they can be. So when I was reading through this case and coming up with my solutions, I was thinking why the parents did not communicate with me before the school board. That was kind of a big issue of why they went straight to them, as well as why my teacher did not feel that she could come to me for help. It was obviously an issue before, and if she needed some assistance, I wish she would have come to me before, so I could have helped before this situation escalated. I was also thinking, are there issues in other classrooms? This is one classroom with Mrs. Horton, but are there other minor issues that can build up to this that are happening? And so in this, I was feeling just upset that the situation got as bad as it did. I was unsure of myself about not being approachable to parents, to my teachers, and also kind of just worried about the future relationship with Mrs. Horton and what this could do to herself as a teacher and the relationship between her and myself. I was valuing communication with teachers and parents. I was also valuing parent concerns. I didn't want the parents to think that I was not concerned about it, just wanted to make them know and that I was taking it into consideration and making it a priority. And I was also valuing the teachers. I was valuing giving Mrs. Horton the help that she needed, as well as valuing the teachers that don't necessarily have issues now, but just making sure that their classroom management is where it needs to be. Some unresolved issues. Mrs. Horton may not share her issues or recognize that there is a problem. That kind of would be a major one. If she doesn't recognize it, it would be kind of difficult to help that. Parents may not like the plan. Mr. Stafford may not be okay with there being a para in the classroom. He may continue to want his child removed, and so then it would be kind of hard to please him if the plan is not okay for him. And then communication may still be an issue, not only with that teacher, but other teachers and parents. The communication may not just right away be solved by me making sure that they know that I want that to be open. In my reflection, a leader promotes the academic success and personal well-being of every student by enhancing instructional capacity. So component 1, in order to promote the academic success of every student, Excuse me. I provided additional help in the classroom by putting that para support in there. I also increased observation of all teachers, specifically Mrs. Horton. And I not only focused improving the environment in Mrs. Horton's classroom, but I also focused it on improving it school-wide. So then all students, not just those in Mrs. Horton's classroom, are affected. To promote the personal well-being of every student, I took all sides and options into consideration by gaining as much information as I could. I didn't just take the side of the teacher or just take the side of the parents and assume that the other was wrong. I also focused on relationships and communication school-wide. Once again, I didn't just keep it specific to Mrs. Horton's classroom. I took it as an opportunity to expand it school-wide to see what all could be improved. And then I also provided Mrs. Horton with help and assistance, helping her with what she needs to work through the issues that she has and be that teacher that she can be. And then finally, to enhance the instructional capacity, I supported my staff by increasing learning opportunities. I had communication with Mrs. Horton, Mr. Stafford, parents, teachers, and then I also increased observations in all classrooms. That will not only help me see the classroom management, but also just the other instruction that's going on. More observations just leads to more knowledge for me, knowing what my teachers are doing. Thanks for watching.